Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm Kris. This is part 2 of 10 Biggest Lies About Jesus part 2. So, before we get started, there is a thanks button on the channel. You can donate, you can subscribe if you'd like to, and thumbs up. This, by the way, I'm continuing some videos from FTD Facts. So, let's get into it.
Just like in part 1, we are going to be revealing 10 of the biggest lies and misconceptions about Jesus, predominantly from the biblical Christian perspective. Hey guys, what's happening? Welcome back to FTD Facts. My name is Leroy Kenton. Let's jump into this episode and just letting you know to watch until the end so you don't miss any of these misconceptions. So let's get this video rolling. We have at number 10, there being only 4 Gospels. So although the canonical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they're widely accepted as the Gospels that are the most authentic, but one interesting thing is that there's actually about 60 other Gospels that were written regarding the life of Jesus Christ. These include the Gospel of Thomas and also the Gospel of Philip. During the early Christian period, it was common for people to adapt Gospels to their own understandings, culture, and languages. Of all of the Gospels, though, 4 canonical Gospels, they're considered to be the most historically accurate of the Gospels. The lie number 9 is that Jesus didn't have nice clothing. He's often portrayed as a humble guy, kind of like a hippie, maybe not necessarily the most fashionable, but Jesus was not out of fashion for his time, actually. The clothing and the robe that he wore must have been well made, as well as it would have some value to it, because it's reported that the Roman soldiers, they gambled for his clothing after his crucifixion. These accounts include the book of Matthew chapter 27 verses 35 and also Luke chapter 23 verses 34. But specifically in the book of John chapter 19 verses 23 to 24, it says, "Then the soldiers, when they had crucified Jesus, took his garments and made 4 parts, to each soldier a part, and also the tunic. Now the tunic was without seam, woven from the top in one piece. Let's not tear it, they said to one another. Let's decide by lot who will get it. This happened that the scripture might be fulfilled that said, they divided my clothes among them and cast lots for my garments." So this is what the soldiers did. So from the biblical text,
I didn't know anything about them gambling for his clothes. That's new to me, but I'm not really religious, so that would be new to me.
if the clothing didn't have any significant value or was appealing in any way, no one would be gambling over it. Moving on to number
Must have been the Gucci of his time.
8. Jesus looked very good looking. He was very, very, very handsome. Well, contrary to popular belief, it can actually be assumed that Jesus was no Hollywood pretty boy because of the prophecy recorded in the book of Isaiah. According to the Bible, it says, "He grew up before him like a tender shoot and like a root out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him." That's taken from the book of Isaiah, chapter 53, verses 2. This is commonly believed to be a prophecy of Jesus, and in it, it shows that he didn't necessarily have all that much outward beauty that people would be so attracted to him based on his looks. For number 7, was he actually born surrounded?
I think his looks would be the most inconsequential thing to his life. I could be wrong, but that to me is the least important thing I'd ever hear about him.
By animals? Was he born in a stable or a barn? Well, the Bible actually does not mention any of these places in connection with the birth of Jesus. It only mentions that there is a manger. Now, if you don't know, a manger is a long open box or container for horses or cattle to eat from. But what the Bible does do is report that Jesus was laid in a manger because there was no room for him in the guest room. Now, as we look at the Greek, the original language, the word kataluma can also be translated as guest chamber or lodging place. Now, the only other time that this word is used in the New Testament of the Bible, which was recorded and translated from the Greek language, it means a furnished or large or upper story room, and this room would be in a private house. So it is translated also as guest chamber in the book of Mark chapter 14 verses 14 to 15. So it doesn't necessarily mean that this was an inn. And according to Bible archaeology experts, Jesus was more likely born in a house with relatives or people that they knew, but he was born outside of the normal living and guest rooms. Also, mangers, by the way, were commonly used inside of houses because what families would do is that they would go and sleep in the upper chambers of the house while smaller animals were kept downstairs, especially on cold nights. And of course, the mangers would be there to feed them. Also, in connection to the birth of Jesus Christ was that he was born last minute. And this comes from the normal, typical depictions in movies or even those told in sermons of the birth of Jesus, that it was a struggle and that Mary and her husband Joseph were in a rush to find a place to give birth right away. But the Bible doesn't actually suggest this. They could have arrived in Bethlehem weeks earlier even. The Bible simply states that while they were there in Bethlehem, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered. And that's taken from the book of Luke chapter 2 verses 6. So arriving in the city well before her due date would more likely make sense rather than it being a last minute rush thing. All right, guys, so we reached halfway in this episode. Just want to take a quick moment to shout out our current members of FTD Facts who have joined the channel. And you can join the channel for exclusive benefits, by the way. The link is down below in the video description section. You can tap on it, join the FTD Facts family by supporting us through monthly membership. And again, big thanks to everybody who's been supporting us so far. Moving on to the lie at number 5. Jesus never cried as a baby. Well, this belief is popularized by the song titled Away in a Manger. Specifically, the line that says, "Away in a manger, the baby awakes, but little Lord Jesus, no crying he makes." Now, according to the Bible, there is no mention that Jesus didn't in fact cry as a baby. It simply doesn't report it, so it would be safer to assume that he operated and acted like any other normal newborn baby. Number 4 brings us, Jesus was fixed to the cross by nails. Nearly every single depiction of Jesus' crucifixion shows him attached to a cross with nails through his hands and through his feet. But the Gospels found in the New Testament don't directly say that Jesus was nailed to the cross. In fact, the only references to nails in the Gospel come from the book of John and the story of Thomas, who doubted that Jesus resurrected. And in the story, he asked Jesus to see the marks of the nails in his body. You can specifically find that in the book of John chapter 20 verses 25. But speaking more about this, so the tradition that Jesus was nailed to the cross may also have come from the passage in some translations of the Bible in the book of Psalm verses 16, which is believed to be a prophecy that says, "They pierced my hands and feet." Now, there is some historical evidence that some nailing of the feet happened during crucifixion to the victims that were put on the crosses, but it would actually be impossible for someone to be fixed to a cross using only nails, since the bones in the hands or the wrists would not even support the weight of their body to stay up there. So what Roman soldiers would do was to tie the victim's wrists to the cross beams, or what they would do is throw over their arms over the back of the beam and then secure them with rope so the body would stay up. So yes, even if nails were used in his hands and feet, he would definitely have to have been hung up in a certain way, not just using nails, but also being tied up on the cross. The lie number 3, Jesus only spoke nice words. There's often a misconception that Jesus never criticized people, never said anything harsh. He was all about just peace and soft language. But when we look at the book of Matthew chapter 23, for example, we find Jesus saying this, "You snakes, you brood of vipers, how will you escape being condemned to hell?" Also, Jesus said in the book of John chapter 8, "You belong to your father, the devil. You want to carry out your father's desires." Definitely not so rosy language used there. Next up, lie number 2 is Jesus lived in Nazareth his entire life. While Jesus did live in Nazareth for a good portion of his life on earth, he didn't live there his whole life, then all of a sudden start traveling to different places without having another home. During his public ministry, Jesus lived in a city of Capernaum, and it was a city in northern Israel. The book of Matthew chapter 4 verses 13 says this, "And leaving Nazareth, he went and lived in Capernaum by the sea in the territory of Zebulun and Naphtali." And also in chapter 9 verses 1 of the same book, it says, "And getting into a boat, he crossed over and came to his own city." And that was not Nazareth. This was Capernaum. And we'll end off this episode with the lie number 1. Jesus was a carpenter. Now, I gotta clarify, by definition, a carpenter is a worker who builds or repairs wooden structures or their structural parts. And according to the Bible, in the book of Mark chapter 6 verses 3, it says, "Is not this the carpenter, the son of Mary?" But according to the original Greek text that the New Testament of the Bible was based on, the word for carpenter is the Greek word tekton, which can be translated as carpenter, but it can also be translated as craftsman, which includes pottery and construction of various forms. So Jesus would most likely be somebody who was skilled in various trades involving construction of some sort, not necessarily just working with wood. So saying that he was a carpenter and worked just with wood is an assumption from the text, especially that the word used doesn't just relate to woodworking. All right, guys, so that is it for this episode.
That was interesting. The last one was interesting. I mean, they were all interesting, but the last one for sure. Because I've only ever heard Jesus was a carpenter. He's a simple man. Humble beginnings. Huh. Interesting. Well, tell me what you think. Is there another? This is the second one, so I've heard 19 or 20 lies about Jesus. Are there any others that you know of, that you've heard of, that I don't know? Probably any of them. I don't know. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to end it here. But until tomorrow, or if I have another video out today, then enjoy that video if you'd like. And then tomorrow, come back if you'd like, and do it all over again. So until then, have a good day, have a good night.